It is the morning sports desk on a Friday, the 26th of April. I'm CJ Baumgartner. There's Corey Tackman. In the middle, it's Perham Activities Director Erin Anderson. He's joining us on the morning sports desk for Activities Director check-ins that we do every Friday with schools across central Minnesota. Hey, Erin, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
It's good to be here. Thank you, guys. I can't think of a better thing to do on a soggy, windy Friday morning.
Erin, normally I like to start these conversations by going back to the kids who usually start the spring sports seasons first. So let's do that. Let's start with those track and field kids. They usually are tougher than everyone else and can either get to an indoor meet or just battle through some of the elements in early spring. What's Yellowjackets track and field like this spring?
Well, we've always got a strong grouping of students that are in track and field here in Perham. The numbers, I'm in my 11th year now as AD, and the numbers have always kind of amazed me here, given our size, of some of the smaller schools around and in the Heart of Lakes Conference, in which we are a part of. We're a bigger of the small schools, right? And so. But I'm always surprised because we're always at 115 to 125, right in that range out for track. And I feel like that's just a pretty good consistent number for our track program. Mike Peterson, our head coach, is a veteran. He's got a great staff. And they've been a hardy lot, as any track program is, especially the last few years. And then Mother Nature's teased us enough this year to think, oh, we're way ahead of schedule. And then suddenly we get a little snowstorm and things got paused again. So we did go indoors a couple of times. We've branched out a little differently. We used to always go to the Concordia indoor meet that a lot of area schools go to. This year we've gone to a couple at NDSU. And we've found that that's been a really good fit for us. In the section realignments, we moved up a class in track, and so that's a challenge for us. And so we're trying to put our students competitively in some opportunities to see maybe some of those bigger schools as well that we'll be competing with when it comes time for sections, and then hopefully some state entrants. But good numbers in track, and they've been to the point now where now they are being a hardy lot. They moved out of the gym. They're not practicing indoors anymore. They're all outside, rain or shine, and they get after it. Yesterday, that wind, as you know, was incredible. And I saw kids out just busting right into that, head on into that wind, getting their run in. But
And let's switch gears here and talk a little Perham Yellowjackets baseball. Obviously a great year in 2023, trying to build off that in 2024. I hear that there was a record-setting performance earlier this week for Perham baseball.
Yeah, the other night we had a conference doubleheader going on, and with Hawley and Blaze Schmidt, one of our seniors, good leader on our baseball team. He had an 8 RBI night in one game, and so that was a school record for one single game performance and RBIs. So his bat was working well, and his teammates had set him up well. His success had guys on base as well, so that was fun for Blaze, and they're off to a good start. They're undefeated at this point. Last year, of course, we made a run. We're able to win the section title and get to the state championship, where we met a really tough ESCO team, who, by the way, if you do your baseball homework around the state, are really tough again. And so we feel good about our team. Coach James Mulcahy does a fabulous job again. I've been blessed with coaches that are invested and passionate. He's certainly one of them. And he's got them at least on a track to compete, I would think, in the section tournament. We've got some good arms. We've got a lot of good guys back, and there's a lot of excitement there. Our numbers there are for baseball off the charts right now, and that speaks well for Coach Mulcahy, what he's got going on there. Our youth numbers are really good as well. So we think we're in a good spot, and this crew's got an opportunity in front of them. They're a good baseball team.
Erin, let's keep the conversation going then around Yellowjackets softball in 2024.
Softball, we have a good group that is really, their measurables are a little bit different than when we were talking about baseball, because they're a younger team and they're building. We've got some good upper class leaders, but that program has been in a kind of a rebuild in the last number of years. And Jason Groth and his staff are working hard to try to find those measurables where maybe if it's a night that isn't even what you draw up and your hope for, right? You might not get a victory. What are the measurable wins? And then they've been competing and scoring runs this year more than I've seen in the last number of years. And so, it comes down to they're building some grit. They're building some youngsters to kind of baptism by fire in some certain positions and areas. And they're fun to watch. And again, baseball and softball pitching is so key. And I feel like in softball, what I've learned about softball is pitching is just really vital. And so we're trying to develop that a little bit with some arms, some younger arms. And we got some girls doing a good job. But I would say this, they're part in our bell system there. You're going to hear some beeps. But they're a team on the grow, and they're working hard to get the successes and the measurables that we're talking about, to see victories every day, no matter what that is.
What does Yellowjacket golf look like this year?
Really good numbers again, which the numbers in golf have been up by about, since COVID, actually. If you guys remember, during COVID, golf was kind of got some victories there because everybody could go golf. Mm-hmm. And so our numbers have been strong since then, have really inflated. And I would say this, we're always competitive, our girls team, our boys team, you look in the Heart of Lakes, and we've always got some good teams in that Heart of Lakes, Hawley, Barnesville, Pelican, Perham, and we're kind of right in that mix. You'll see things anywhere from, hey, they're winning a meet to their third to their kind of in that first to third to fourth area is kind of where I see both of these squads right now, as I've been observing. And then we've got some individuals that will really push to have some good success. But numbers are great. Coach Buttenhoff and Coach Solberg on the girls' side, again, do a fabulous job connecting with these kids. And, we're trying to push there too. We've got a tough section. Detroit Lakes comes back into our section. And their golf program around this area is consistently dominant. Mm-hmm. And so, it's one of those things where, as much as we would like to say, oh yeah, they're back, it's kind of like, oh gosh, DL's back. But and good for them. And that's me giving a kudos to their program. They're tremendous in golf. And so you kind of look at that hurdle every time you think about sections right now, but they're doing a great job. The Yellowjacket golfers, we're blessed in this community to have great facilities and, 27 holes to try to sharpen our clubs up on. And that's a nice resource for us here at Lakeside Country Club. And we thank them for their support every year. But we're doing all right there. And there's a bit of a youth movement in those new numbers too.
Elsewhere around spring, any other activities that we need to know about? You got lacrosse in Perham yet? Has that made its way there?
We aren't we're not there yet, but and nobody's asked about that one. Every once in a while, you get asked by some people about a few things that we don't have. But as a reminder, in Perham we do have tennis, and so our boys tennis team was up in Moorhead yesterday. Again, I'll mention the wind. The videos that I got sent from that Moorhead Perham boys tennis match was unbelievable. You got your net that normally would be right, huh? Those nets were like flapping horizontally, but they played. I can't believe they did, but they did. And so the boys tennis team has 16 or 17 kids out for it, which on the boys side is pretty good. And so I'll remind people that we have that going on in the spring as well. And then we have some outliers, as a number of schools do. You've got our robotics team is still going. I don't know how we define that season, winter, spring, both. They qualified for the state robotics championships here at the beginning of May down at the University of Minnesota. Our visual arts are over in New York Mills today. We've got hot shots and our fishing team kicking in, as a number of other schools around the area do. Our FFA was just at state. So seems like springtime is just, we're juggling all kinds of balls in the air, and we got a lot of kids doing a lot of good things. And so we've been blessed there. So lots going on. Yeah, there's just plenty to do. And again, I can't thank people enough that are involved, the coaches, the advisors. Our speech team just wrapped, so speech is kind of one of those that flies into the spring. They were at state, finished 5th as a team at state, had 8 state medalists. So Casey Wacker and her club did a fabulous job. So I'm a pretty blessed AD, guys. I kind of show up to work and I say, hang on and hold on. Who do I got to hold on to? Because I've got some great people invested in students and their successes. I know that's happening in a lot of our schools. We're really lucky in this area to have good people campaigning for our kids.
We're talking with Perham Activities Director Erin Anderson, joining us on the morning sports desk today. Erin, appreciate the time you coming on, talking about everything Yellowjackets. It's really fun to get to check in on everything that's going on, and it sounds like there's a lot. So appreciate the time, and hope to talk to you soon when we'll be previewing the fall already.
Thanks for what you're doing, guys. This is awesome. I think it's great. I'm an advocate for you guys too in the Superstation. And I would also say thanks for what you guys do to get out and broadcast and bring some of these events to our folks that really want to tune into these things. So thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erin.
Once again, Corey, that was Perham Activities Director Erin Anderson joining us on the morning sports desk. And as always, they do a great job with those interviews and giving us an insight into what's going on in their programs and the shout outs. It's really great. And it's awesome. So we appreciate Erin for his time this morning. Corey, we got a lot of stuff to talk about in state sports. We do have a game technically on the broadcast schedule with Wadena Deer Creek and Monaga baseball, although weather pending. So we'll see if that game does happen. 101.7 FM, AM 920, KWAD, 4:15 pregame, 4:30 first pitch. If you're listening to this later in the afternoon, maybe the game happened. There we go. That's awesome. And if
maybe it's happening right now.
Yeah, maybe you're listening while you're at the game. That'd be awesome. But either way, that should be a good one if that one does happen. Weather pending. Of course, I talked with Coach Dykoff earlier in the week. He was hopeful, but trying to be optimistic about the chances of a game. But you know how Mother Nature likes to do her thing.
Right.
So we'll see on that one. But we got a lot of state sports stuff to talk about. Let's start off with getting the Twins out of the way. They swept the White Sox in 4 games. White Sox have one of the worst starts in MLB history. You did what you needed to do. If the Twins go 4-2 in their next 6, Corey, they're back to 500. And they dig themselves out of that hole. So that's the assignment. They have 3 games against the White Sox coming up next week. They're over the weekend are going to be on the West Coast playing the Angels. So as long as they can get Mike Trout out, they'll probably win. Or at least not have anybody on base when he hits a home run. You'll probably win. There you go. There's your Twins update. Let's just dive right into the NFL draft, because that's something that we talked about a lot yesterday about how many different options could happen. And we kind of both said gut level, there's a real chance the Vikings end up with JJ McCarthy. And Corey, who do the Minnesota Vikings end up with?
Well, there was, like we talked about, there were 1,000 different permutations on what could happen for the Vikings. And we all, I think, generally speaking, felt pretty good about just about all of the options. And what happened last night was one of those 1,000 options. They move up one spot to get JJ McCarthy from the University of Michigan. Probably move up because they're feeling a little heat, or the Jets are telling them there's a little heat coming from another position or another franchise somewhere else in the draft. They get up and get a quarterback who they think can be the quarterback of the future. And let's be reasonable about this, right? He is one of the 4 who everyone kind of feels like could maybe be that guy. So knowing all the different options that the Vikings had, knowing what they had coming later in the draft, even without the benefit of hindsight, right? Knowing what they had coming up, I feel this sounds like it's going to be an understatement, CJ. That's a perfectly fine use of their 11th overall pick to move up one spot into the 10th. I have not a single issue with how that went.
So in the moment, first of all, the big major curveball of the day, as I talked about yesterday, I was all in on Michael Penix. I thought that could have worked. I was all in. And then you get to pick number 8. And first of all, I have my thing with insiders. Stop tweeting the picks before they happen. I hate that. I want to scroll social media to see how everybody's reacting to the draft, not get it spoiled for me. Knock it off. Don't do that. That's annoying.
I agree completely.
Awful TV. Knock it off. I could rant about that forever. But so I had the Michael Penix pick spoiled because Albert Breer decided to put it out there on Twitter before the pick happened. I'm already watching on YouTube TV. I got a delay no matter what. Don't do that to me. And I saw that and I started freaking out. And my wife just like looking at me like, I think you need to like pet the dog or something. You need to calm down. Because I was like, why would Atlanta do that? Why would the Falcons do that? Why would they? Anyway, that's a conversation for a different day. But that meant that a quarterback piece came off the board, which meant that there were 3 teams theoretically that needed a quarterback with the Vikings, the Broncos, and the Raiders. And there were only 2 first-round quarterbacks left. And the Vikings were ahead of both of them. But as you talked about, they jump up to number 10 to get their guy. And some people say, well, why would they trade up with the Jets? The Jets were not going to take a quarterback. They were not. But you needed to make sure that the Broncos or the Raiders didn't trade up to get a quarterback. And knowing Sean Payton, he probably was in the mix to trade up. Peyton Manning had reports that said they like McCarthy. Peyton Manning's not just saying that to say it. Peyton Manning's nobody's fool. Like, he's going out there because he genuinely thinks that they like JJ McCarthy. And for the Vikings to trade up, they give up a 4th and a 5th round pick. And I don't like that they had to trade up. I don't like it. I didn't like it in the moment. But now that I get 12 hours to kind of process, I think you had to. Because if you felt like Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy were the same, the Vikings could have sat at 11 and just took whoever fell to them. They didn't need to trade up. But they obviously felt like JJ McCarthy was on a much higher level than Bo Nix because you gave up a 4th and a 5th round pick to go get him. And if that's what you think, and if Kevin O'Connell thinks that much higher of McCarthy than Nix, then go get your guy. We talked about that. If you're not afraid to go up and trade a bunch of 1st round picks to go get Drake May, well, you traded a 4th and a 5th round pick to go up and get JJ McCarthy. And some people thought the Vikings would have to trade all the way up to 4 to get him and give up a 1st round pick next year. So the Vikings not to do that and to hang on to that pick. I will get to the other pick the Vikings made in the 1st round in a second, but just don't have the JJ McCarthy vibes. I mean, there's some things I don't like. I had a whole bit when you were gone, Corey, talking about how I'm not sold on JJ McCarthy, but I'm not sold as in like, he wouldn't be the guy I would move heaven and earth to get. But when you get him at 10, he's the highest drafted quarterback in Vikings franchise history, picked 1 spot ahead of Dante Culpepper. I mean, you can sell me on the idea that this can work. And I think that's the biggest thing. JJ McCarthy is a winner. JJ McCarthy is a guy who's got a cannon arm. He can sling it through the 2nd fastest football out of the combine. I think overall, when you look at it, there's reasons why JJ McCarthy can work. He played in a pro style offense, played in a very NFL demanding head coach in Jim Harbaugh, won a lot of football games. Corey, get me excited. Why should Vikings fans be excited for JJ McCarthy in your mind?
Oh, well, I would like to just address one thing that you said there first, and that is we both have said, and I think many people have said this, that maybe he wasn't worth moving heaven and earth for. And they didn't.
Right.
They didn't move heaven and earth to get him. He was one of the 3 guys who they felt like probably realistically were where they were in the draft that they had a chance to get. So draft rules don't apply to quarterbacks. They just, if you have a chance to get one of the guys who you think can change your future, you just have to take the shot at it. So the reason to get excited for it is because they're excited for it, right? It doesn't feel like they they reached. If they would have had to move up to 4 to get JJ McCarthy, it would have felt like it was a reach. But the way things worked out, because Atlanta did what they did, which was ridiculous.
Just
a total mess up.
Yeah.
Just a total misallocation of resources by Atlanta. But because Atlanta did what you did, again, rules don't apply in the draft to quarterbacks. You got to make sure if you think there's a guy there who can do it, you got to do what you can to get the guy. And then they didn't have to move heaven and earth to get the guy. The reason you should be excited is because they got him with minimal tax, just like convenient, like just a convenience fee is all they ended up having to pay for that. I don't know if that guy's going to be good. I'm pretty sure the only one who's going to be good out of all the quarterbacks is Caleb Williams. I don't know that JJ McCarthy's going to be good. It doesn't matter.
Jaden Daniels, they have bust, but everybody has bust potential.
And it doesn't matter. The reason you should be excited is because if it doesn't work out, you move on. And if it does work out, holy buckets. And because the Vikings had so much flexibility in this draft, and what they did then with their 23 pick to get Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama, it just puts this beautiful cherry on what was, I think, probably close to an ideal first round draft.
To put it in words of what's been said on Twitter, let Kwesi cook. Kwesi was cooking yesterday. And it's a real departure from his first draft. Remember, he traded down to accumulate picks and passed on Kyle Hamilton, a safety who's really, really good for the Baltimore Ravens. And the Vikings took a different safety in Lewis Cine, who is not good, busted on impact, and then got hurt. And basically buried him before he even had a chance to turn himself around. So I think there's a learning experience there for Kwesi. That was his first draft, first time running a team. And now a couple drafts later, he said in a press conference, he's like, I'm an analytical guy, but at a certain point you have to take the Clark Kent glasses off. That's what he said word for word, Clark Kent glasses off, and go get a guy. And the Vikings needed a blue chip talent on their defense. Now in the trade for Dallas Turner, the Vikings moved up from 23 to 17. The Vikings gave up pick number 167, which was a 4th round pick, I believe, a 2023 third round pick, a 2025 third round pick, and a 4th round pick in that year for number 17. The Vikings have 3 draft picks next year, but they got to keep their first rounder. That's important. And that's what is like, if you look at the analytical charts on like who won the trade based on value, the Vikings lost them based on value for McCarthy and for Dallas Turner. But you know what? The Vikings got their quarterback of the future. They didn't have to give up their 23rd overall pick, which meant they could trade up for 17. They didn't have to give up the 1st round pick for next year. And not only did you get your QB of the future, Corey, you got the best defensive player in the draft, because so many people there was a record for amount of offensive players taken in this draft. And we kind of said, with the quarterbacks, there's going to be some good defenders available because they're all going to slide down for the Vikings at 23. But I tell you, I'd be shocked if Dallas Turner was still on the board at 17. The Vikings could have sat back and taken a corner, and I would have been okay with that. But for them to trade up and get an edge rusher, taking a defensive edge rusher out of Alabama is always going to be a win for me. The positives on Dallas Turner: he's got a good frame with room to put weight on, a good athletic ability. He has a few impressive finesse moves that could win in the NFL, namely a dip, rip, and ghost rush, according to Bleacher Report. Pair those with good bend to turn a tight corner. Solid as a bull rusher with good hand placement and leg drive, enough strength to collapse the pocket against NFL offensive tackles who have a weaker base. Closes in on the quarterback in a hurry, has quick hands, can get penetration when slanting. The guy's got a few technique things to work out, but you have a blue chip player now for Brian Flores' defense. And we talked about this, the Vikings coming away with potentially a quarterback of the future and a building block on defense. When Kwesi said flexibility with the 23rd overall pick, we all kind of assumed that meant flexibility to go get a quarterback. And I think that's really what it was. But the second option, tier 1B, was, well, heck, now we can get another blue chip player for our team. And there's a ton of good defenders there. Ultimately, I'm really excited about what the Vikings are doing. They're not really going to draft anymore. They're going to draft all on Saturday, but the team got better, and it's really exciting to see what they're going to do.
And what's important to remember in all of this is it's really easy to look at a draft in a vacuum. It's really easy to look at this draft in a vacuum, and just the drafting process in general, right? You said they only have 3 picks next year, but one of the things that is forgotten about is how much money they have. They have so much money coming open. Now they're going to have to, they got to pay JJ. There's some things that are due up, of course, that needs to happen, but what they're not going to be able to do in free agency this year, they accounted for in the draft. Mm-hmm. And what they're not going to be able to do in the draft next year, they're going to be able to account for in free agency. So in like, if you spread this window out to a 2-year combination draft free agency kind of pie, mm-hmm. They're in a really nice spot. It would seem. Obviously, these guys need to work out, and that is yet to be seen, but in a decent spot right now, I think.
Right. And the Vikings cornerback room is very thin. They still like Mekhi Blackman, maybe Booth Jr., Caleb Evans. There's a few guys that can develop, but they really don't have a blue chip DB. But that being said, next year, 2025, or they're not competing in 2024 for the playoff Super Bowl. Like, that's a goal, but obviously, I don't think most fans are expecting playoffs this coming year, especially with how tough the NFC North is going to be. But 2025, this team should be expected to compete. And in 2025, you have all this money, go buy the top free agent corner on the market, and then go draft one with a first-round pick. Like, the Vikings have set themselves up, not necessarily this year. This year is the developmental year. Let's see what you have in McCarthy. Let's give Dallas Turner a year to develop under Brian Flores and put on that weight and develop his technique. And let's let this defense kind of come together. And in 2025, this team can really be something. That's not always the answer people want to hear after the draft. Everybody wants to hear that their team is a Super Bowl contender immediately. But the Vikings took a massive big step to get where they want to be.
And if you have guys in the front 7 who can get to the quarterback, your defensive back play gets better by default.
Right. And Danielle Hunter is a great edge rusher. And to lose him is tough. Like that's tough. He's top 5 rusher in the league. But you signed Jonathan Grenard. You have Dallas Turner. You brought in Andrew Van Ginkel. You brought in Blake Cashman. You brought in Jaharius Ward or whatever his name is from New York. They added so many more bodies. You still have Ivan Pace. You still have Josh Metellus. There's so many rushers now. Who outside of Danielle Hunter, what rusher did the Vikings have a year ago? Nothing. And and you'd watch it. Not only could they not stop the run, but they couldn't get to the quarterback unless it was Danielle Hunter. So for them to be in the spot, their defense has blue chip players now. Brian Flores made a bad defensive roster into a below average unit. Now, even if, like, let's say it's a league average for talent on defense, what can Flores do now that he has now that he has another year under this system to implement, but also actual good defensive players? That's going to be huge for this team. I'm excited. I'm excited about Vikings football. And if you always walk away from, like, you could walk away from the draft being Atlanta, or even if you like Penix, you're like, I don't know, like, this is just weird. You come away with a weird vibe. To come out of the draft feeling good about your team is always a win.
CJ, Diana Rossini on Twitter, who has been all over this Atlanta thing. Here are her most recent
this morning
takes. One was 11 hours ago, and then another one from an hour ago.
Okay.
So I'll read these chronologically for you.
Sure.
From 11 hours ago, from Diana Rossini, works for The Athletic. Why would Atlanta use their 8th pick in the draft on a QB? The team believes they won't have a top pick with Cousins under center the next few years, and now is the time to get a great one. But they galaxy brain themselves. They think they're going to be so good at football that by the time Kirk Cousins' contract is up, there will never be another good. They're going to be drafting so high they'll never have a chance at a good quarterback. So they took him now.
And by the way, today they put out a draft. Yesterday they put out a tweet before the draft talking about Drake London and Kyle Pitts, who they both took at number 8 overall, and the Falcons are picking at number 8 again. And they're like, our last number 8 overall picks worked out pretty well. And they're like, then why do you keep picking in that spot?
And then this one's from an hour ago. Okay. Michael Penix Jr. did not take a top 30 visit to Flowery Branch, Georgia. The Falcons only attended a 45-minute workout and met with him at the combine. It's almost unheard of for a QB taken in the first to not be on a team's top 30. In the end, Atlanta felt comfortable with the work they did.
So they didn't meet with him at all, but they really loved him. That's the thing. They were sold on him immediately before they signed Kirk Cousins. They knew that they could get him. What are they doing? Okay, I'm going to say this and be done because I know this is not an Atlanta Falcons podcast. But
who cares? They all this Viking stuff is amazing. The lead from this draft is what the Atlanta Falcons did. It was stunning.
Well, because here's the thing. If they took JJ McCarthy 8 overall, I get it, actually. That one, that's weird, but I get it. Like, he's 21. Let him sit for a few years. Michael Penix is like 2 years younger than me. He's 20. He'll be 24 by the time the season starts. He'll be
28 when Kirk Cousins' contract is up.
Right. And even if Kirk only plays for, let's say, 2 years, he's 26. And that people are like, well, we have a quarterback now, but you're not going to see if he's any good until he's basically done with his rookie contract. That's the thing with Jordan Love. He's going to get paid, and there's not a lot of sample size. Even though he had a good year, he might be good, but you don't quite know. And that's the other thing with Atlanta. Why would you Kirk Cousins' agent is not happy.
Well, neither is Kirk.
No, he's speaking on behalf of Kirk, but yeah,
there is, it's a total waste of resources. So let's say Penix is good.
Right.
He's going to start this season because Kirk Cousins is injured.
Right.
Penix is going to start the season. The day one starter is going to be Michael Penix Jr. for the Atlanta Falcons in all likelihood.
I had somebody tell me this yesterday. They're like, well, I don't see why Kirk should be so upset. Like, what does it matter? Like, you should just beat him out anyways. It's like, well, you signed on this team to expect to win the Super Bowl and for them to invest around you, and they immediately draft your replacement.
This is not about Kirk either. This is not like I'm saying this
malpractice 101.
What if Penix is good? Then you wasted all of that money on Cousins that
$100 million guaranteed
that you could have used in a free agency market and in draft capital to sign players and to build around Penix. And instead what you did is you elected to spend that money on Kirk Cousins, which is fine. He's pretty good at that position, as he's proven throughout the years. So instead of getting somebody who could protect Kirk Cousins, could defend a lead, to give somebody to throw to give somebody, you could have done anything to help Kirk Cousins. You did the one thing that will not help your team. You took the 8th overall pick to draft a backup or prove that you wasted all of that money on Cousins in the first place.
This is a reverse RG3 Kirk Cousins situation, like in its entirety. Like, you immediately get the guy. Now, the Washington at the time spent a lot of draft capital. They didn't spend a lot of money, but they were very invested in getting RG3, and then they took Kirk Cousins right behind him. And now the same thing happened, but in reverse. And Kirk Cousins talked about how unhappy he was to go in that situation to Washington. You think as an established veteran, he's happy right now?
There is no window, right? I know what I understand what they're saying. Atlanta's saying. But your window in 4 years is not guaranteed.
Right.
You only have right now. That's why you went and got Kirk Cousins, because your window right now is open.
Right.
Take advantage of the open window that's in front of you. A 5-year window doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane what they did.
Insane. Because do you see the quote from the Atlanta GM where he's like, well, if he's good, like, we hope that he doesn't need to play for 4 or 5 years. He'll be 30. What are you doing? And you won't know if he's any good.
You do not take the 8th pick and cross your fingers and hope he'll be good in 5 years. That's not what that pick is for.
Their GM with the 8th overall pick drafted a tight end, which is not, I get Kyle Pitts is a freak athlete. They failed to use him, and you don't take a tight end with a top 10 pick. You just don't. That's not a luxury position.
If you do, and with a guy who you should utilize then, I mean, there's just terrible team building. They've done nothing to help Kyle Pitts over the years.
At 8, they already had a running back last year, and then they took a luxury pick of another running back. Atlanta's team building is really bad. The NFC South has been begging them to win it for like the last 3 years, and they just refuse to, whether of poor coaching hires, poor drafting. Atlanta still probably will make the playoffs this year, but that's of course that's in spite of themselves. That's not because they built a good team.
I'll be in what's going to be the most annoying is in 4 years, Michael Penix Jr. is going to be really good, and they'll be absolutely right. Like, it's going to totally work out.
Yeah.
And it will not excuse the stupidity of doing what they did.
Right. Well, and it's, they said the Green Bay model. We wanted to do the Green Bay model. And I get that on its face, but you're not following the Green Bay model. You know what Green Bay does? They take quarterbacks in the back half of the first round.
Yeah.
They don't take them at 8 overall.
Yeah. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers fell to 24.
Jordan Love was taken at like 27. He was in the 20s. Like, you didn't draft him 8th overall. Are you insane? Also,
it was stupid. It was just, I'm sure your phone was the same thing when we were obviously texting each other too. But the second that pick happened, my phone got hot, literally, physically. I got so many text messages so quickly.
Oh, Atlanta, never change. This has been the Morning Sports Desk for Friday.